A shy girl. Went for a routine checkup. Never knew her young. Doctor was a millionaire. Who'd change her life. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We have noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It is quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you heartfelt cinematic stories every week. Your support truly means everything to us. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. She walked into the clinic expecting silence and routine, never knowing that the man behind the white coat would rewrite the story of her life. The rain had just stopped when Maya Thompson stepped out of the bus and hurried across the glistening pavement toward Harborview Medical Center. The morning air smelled of salt and wet asphalt, the kind that sticks to your breath and nerves alike. Her fingers trembled as she held the appointment slip, her first full checkup in years. Inside, the lobby glowed with soft golden lights, the hum of quiet conversation mixed with the faint scent of disinfectant and coffee. To everyone else, it was just another Thursday. To Maya, it felt like standing in front of a mountain she was not sure she could climb. She adjusted her cardigan, the same one she had worn since college, and whispered to herself, "It is just a checkup, nothing more." Still, her pulse would not slow. For too long, hospitals had meant anxiety and memories she tried not to revisit. But life in her small apartment had become a loop of fear and avoidance, and today was her first act of courage. At the reception desk, she stumbled slightly over her words. "Hi, I am here for a chin bamui appointment." The nurse smiled kindly. "Dr. Carter will see you soon. Please take a seat." Dr. Nathan Carter. The name sounded ordinary enough. Maya imagined an older man with gray hair and half-moon glasses. She chose a seat near the window, clutching the thin silver bracelet that once belonged to her mother. It was her quiet anchor, worn so long the metal had dulled to a soft gray shine. Minutes later, a man in a light blue coat appeared at the hallway entrance. Young mid-30s, tall, sharp eyes that somehow looked gentle. "Maya Thompson?" he asked. His voice carried both warmth and quiet authority. She stood quickly, almost knocking over her bag. "Hi, yes, that is me." He smiled slightly, noticing her nerves. "I am Dr. Carter. You are right on time." He gestured toward his office. The walls were painted a calm shade of sea green, the color of low tide. A framed photograph of a coastal sunrise hung behind his desk. When she hesitated to remove her bracelet before the examination, he said softly, "I can hold on to it for you. I promise I will. Return it before you leave." His tone was kind, professional, yet something about it made her chest tighten. No one had spoken to her that gently in a long time. As the minutes passed, her fear slowly faded into conversation. He asked about her work. She told him she worked part-time at a used bookstore near the harbor. He listened, not with the forced politeness of a doctor, but with genuine curiosity. She noticed he never rushed her answers, never checked his watch. For Dr. Nathan Carter, it was routine, another patient, another morning. But as he looked at her hands, still trembling when she spoke, he felt something shift. There was a fragility in her, but also a quiet strength. It reminded him why he had chosen to practice medicine away from his family's empire, the Colton Medical Group, a name that ruled every hospital in the state. None of his patients knew that he was the heir to a fortune, and that was exactly how he wanted it. When the checkup ended, Maya stood to leave. "Thank you for being patient with me," she said softly. Nathan smiled. "Patience is the first medicine, Maya. Take care of yourself, and do not forget your bracelet." She slid it back onto her wrist, the metal cool against her skin. As she walked out into the sunlight, she did not see Nathan watching from the window, a thoughtful expression shadowing his face. Something about her lingered, a simplicity he had almost forgotten existed. And though neither of them knew it yet, that ordinary morning at Harborview was the beginning of a story that would heal them both. A few days passed after that quiet morning at Harborview Medical Center, yet the memory stayed with Maya longer than she expected. She kept thinking about Dr. Carter's voice, calm and steady, like it had spoken directly to the part of her that never felt safe. For years, she had avoided doctors, hospitals, and anything that reminded her of loss, but this time felt different. There was something about the way he listened not to her illness, but to her silence. Every evening, Maya walked home from the bookstore with a cup of chamomile tea in her hand, replaying that short visit in her mind. The city around her glowed with holiday lights, people rushing past with laughter and purpose. She watched them and wondered when she had last felt that light inside herself. Across town, in a glass-walled office overlooking the harbor, Dr. Nathan Carter reviewed a list of upcoming patient follow-ups. Among the names, his eyes paused on hers. Maya Thompson, he murmured quietly. He had told himself she was just another patient, but something about her made him stop and think about why he had become a doctor in the first place. For years, Nathan had hidden from his last name. The Colton family owned hospitals, research facilities, and more wealth than he ever cared to spend. After losing his father, he had promised himself that he would not become another businessman in a white coat. That was why he had left the headquarters and chosen this smaller clinic, working under his middle name. Here, no one treated him like an empire. They treated him like a man doing his job. The following week, Maya received a call from the clinic. The nurse told her that Dr. Carter was starting a small healing routine program for patients who needed help building confidence in their health. It would include follow-up sessions, guided activities, and mental wellness support. Dr. Carter personally suggested your name, the nurse added kindly. Maya hesitated. She could barely afford the bus fare, let alone another appointment. But something inside her whispered, go. Maybe it was time to stop surviving and start living again. When she arrived at the clinic for the first session, she found a circle of chairs in a bright, sunlit room. There were only 5 participants, each with a quiet story behind their eyes. Dr. Carter greeted everyone, not from behind a desk, but seated among them. He smiled at Maya when their eyes met, and for the first time in years, she did not feel small. The program started simply. Daily gratitude notes, breathing exercises, gentle walks by the harbor. But for Maya, those moments were more than routines. They were reminders that she still existed. Each week, she grew more open, sharing fragments of her life, her job at the bookstore, and her fear of being seen as fragile. Nathan listened with full attention, sometimes taking notes in his small leather journal. One afternoon after the session, he walked beside her along the boardwalk. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, the air cool and clean. You know, he said softly, healing is not about fixing what is broken. It is about believing you deserve to be whole again. Maya looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. Do you really believe that? He nodded. I have to. Otherwise, I would not be standing here. The breeze lifted her hair, and for the first time, she smiled without hesitation. Then maybe I can try believing it too. Nathan watched her walk toward the bus stop, that same quiet strength shining through her shy demeanor. He slipped his hands into his coat pockets and found himself tracing the edge of the silver bracelet he had returned to her days ago. Something told him their paths had only just begun to cross. That night, back in her small apartment, Maya placed the bracelet on her nightstand and whispered to herself, maybe healing starts here. She did not know that miles away, in the office overlooking the same harbor, Nathan was looking out the window, writing those exact words in his journal. And somewhere between the two, the story of their healing had already begun to take shape. Winter settled over the city, soft and gray, wrapping Harborview in a calm that felt almost sacred. For Maya, the healing routine had become the one place where her mind could breathe. Each week, she saw Dr. Nathan Carter guiding the small group, listening, encouraging, and never once making anyone feel lesser for being there. She had started bringing a notebook with her, jotting down his words like small pieces of light she did not want to lose. Write one thing you are proud of today, he would often say. It does not have to be big. Even showing up counts. At first, Maya struggled. Proud? She was barely holding herself together. But one afternoon, she wrote a single line. I did not cancel. It was simple, but it felt powerful. Nathan noticed her handwriting, delicate and careful, like someone afraid to take up space. That is a good start, he told her with a smile. Sometimes courage is just walking through the door. As the weeks went by, a quiet friendship began to grow between them. Nathan often stayed behind after the group dismissed, cleaning up the coffee cups and straightening chairs while Maya helped organize handouts. Their conversations started practical about the sessions, about her progress, but soon drifted toward small things. Books she loved, the smell of old pages, the sound of rain hitting the shop's roof. He listened to every word, as if she were telling him something rare and valuable. She noticed how he always wore the same wristwatch, scratched at the edges but polished every morning. One evening, while returning a folder to his desk, she saw a drawing tucked inside his journal, a quick sketch of the harbor at dusk, the same view they had walked past weeks before. "You draw?" she asked. Nathan looked embarrassed for a moment, then nodded. "Only when I cannot find the right words," Maya smiled. "Then you must draw often." He laughed quietly. The sound soft, but genuine. Lately, yes. In truth, Nathan had started sketching after meeting her. It was his way of understanding feelings he could not express aloud. He had spent years surrounded by people who admired his last name but never asked about his heart. Maya's presence reminded him that kindness could exist without expectation. One evening, as the group prepared to leave, the sky outside turned violet, and the first snow began to fall. Maya pulled her cardigan close, hesitating at the doorway. Nathan called after her. "Do you have a ride home?" "I usually take the bus," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The weather looks rough. I can drive you if you do not mind." She hesitated but finally nodded. The drive was quiet at first. The wipers brushed away the snow in rhythmic swipes, and the world beyond the windshield blurred into streaks of white and amber. He played soft jazz on the radio, the notes filling the silence between them. Maya spoke first. "You always seem calm. Do you ever get tired of taking care of everyone else?" Nathan's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Every day," he admitted, "but helping people keeps me grounded. It reminds me of who I want to be, not who the world expects." His words lingered long after she stepped out of the car. She waved goodbye, snowflakes catching in her hair. Inside her small apartment, she sat on the edge of her bed, touching the bracelet again. It had always been her mother's reminder that kindness could heal anything. Tonight, it felt true. Meanwhile, Nathan returned to his office overlooking the harbor. He opened his journal and added a new line beneath his latest sketch. "Healing starts when someone finally listens." He looked out through the glass, the city lights shimmering on the water. Somewhere out there, Maya was probably reading or writing in her notebook, doing what she always did, finding quiet strength in small moments. And for the first time in years, Nathan realized that maybe he was the one being healed. By mid-January, the city had begun to thaw. The snow still clung to rooftops, but the air had softened, carrying the faint smell of salt from the harbor. Inside the clinic, sunlight spilled through the wide windows, catching the dust motes that danced like golden flakes. The healing routine program was nearing its final month, and the patients had grown into something like a small family. Yet for Maya, her connection with Dr. Nathan Carter had deepened in ways she could not quite explain. She had never been one to trust easily, but Nathan's quiet steadiness felt different. He never rushed her stories, never tried to fix her pain with easy words. Instead, he met her in it, patient and calm, reminding her through his presence that healing was not about erasing what hurt, but learning to breathe beside it. One afternoon, after the group finished, Nathan asked her to stay behind. "I have been thinking about expanding this program," he said, glancing at the notes spread across his desk. "It has done more than I imagined. You have been a big part of that, Maya." Her cheeks flushed. "Me? I have barely spoken half the blessed time." He smiled. "Sometimes the person who listens changes the room the most." She did not know how to answer, so she simply smiled back. He gestured toward the file in front of him. "I would like your help. I want to create a reading corner in the waiting area. Books that bring calm, stories that remind people they are not alone." "You work in a bookstore, right?" Maya's eyes brightened. "I could help with that. I know exactly which stories could make people feel seen." "Good," he said warmly. "Then it is settled." They spent the next few evenings gathering donations, labeling shelves, and arranging chairs near the wide window that faced the bay. Each night, the room began to feel less like a hospital and more like a sanctuary. Nathan often caught himself watching her as she arranged books, her fingers tracing the spines with quiet affection. There was a gentleness in the way she moved, like she was building something sacred. During one of those evenings, power flickered across the city. The lights in the clinic dimmed, leaving the two of them in a wash of pale blue from the emergency bulbs. Maya looked up from the shelf. "Looks like the storm found us again," Nathan chuckled softly. It would not be Boston without one. The silence that followed was comfortable but charged. Outside, wind swept against the glass, rattling the windows slightly. He turned toward her, his voice lower now. "You have changed this place more than you know." She met his gaze, uncertain of what to say. "You are the one who built it." "Maybe," he said, "but you are the reason it feels alive." For a moment, their eyes held. Then, as if realizing how close they were standing, Maya stepped back, pretending to straighten a stack of books. "You should probably lock up before the storm gets worse," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan nodded, though part of him wanted to ask her to stay a little longer. "Get home. Safe, Maya." That night, neither of them slept well. Maya lay awake listening to the rain, her mind filled with images of his smile under the flickering light. Nathan sat in his office, the city glowing faintly beyond the glass, and wrote in his journal again. "Healing is not a destination. It is a person who walks beside you." The next morning, when Maya returned to the clinic, she found a new book placed on the shelf, one she had mentioned weeks earlier, but never expected to see there. Inside the cover, written in neat, careful handwriting, were 6 words: "For Maya, thank you for believing." She traced the letters with her fingertips, her throat tightening. She looked toward Nathan's office window across the hall. He was inside, talking with a patient, but when he glanced up and met her eyes through the glass, he smiled. And in that quiet, simple exchange, something unspoken bloomed between them, something that felt a lot like hope. February arrived with sharp winds off the Atlantic, but inside, Harbor View, the days carried a quiet warmth. The reading corner that Maya and Nathan had built had become the heart of the clinic. Patients lingered longer, flipping through pages while waiting for appointments. Sometimes Nathan would walk past and see Maya there, helping an older woman choose a book, her face calm and bright. Every time, something inside him softened. But as the light between them grew, so did the weight of everything Nathan kept hidden. The Colton family name followed him like a shadow. He had built his life at Harborview under his middle name to escape that pressure, to feel like more than the heir of a medical empire. Yet, each day the board called, demanding updates, reminding him that time was running out. His uncle, now chairman, wanted him to return and take his seat as the official successor of Colton Medical Group. Nathan avoided those calls, but he knew he could not avoid them forever. One Friday afternoon, he was finishing paperwork when a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Dr. Carter?" Maya stood at his office door, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "I thought you might need a break." He smiled, surprised. "You read my mind." She handed him a cup and sat across from him. The window behind her framed the harbor, winter light turning the water silver. For a few minutes, they sat quietly, sipping their coffee. It was comfortable, familiar, the kind of silence that feels safe. Then she asked softly, "You always seem far away lately. Is everything all right?" He looked down at the cup in his hand, hesitating. "There is just a lot waiting outside this place." "Outside," she repeated, confused. He nodded. "I did not come here by accident. I needed to understand what healing really means, without money, without titles. But sometimes the world does not let you hide forever." Maya studied him for a long moment, sensing something deeper beneath his words. "Maybe hiding is not the same as healing," she said gently. He looked up, their eyes meeting across the desk. "You might be right." That evening, as the last patients left, Nathan stepped outside to lock the clinic doors. Across the street, he saw Maya waiting for the bus, her scarf fluttering in the cold wind. For a brief moment, he wanted to run after her, to tell her everything, the truth about his family, the empire, the inheritance, the reason he had chosen this quiet life. But fear held him still. He told himself she would see him differently once she knew. Over the weekend, The clinic hosted a small community health fair. Patients, volunteers, and local vendors filled the lobby with laughter and conversation. Maya helped organize a book drive table, handing out donated novels wrapped with ribbons. She had no idea that her ex-boyfriend Ryan was among the visitors, working for a health equipment supplier. When Ryan saw her, he smirked. Well, if it is not Maya Thompson, still playing, nurse for other people's problems. The words cut deep, but she straightened her back. I am doing something meaningful, Ryan. Something that helps people. He laughed. You? You could not even help yourself. Before Maya could reply, Nathan appeared beside her. His calm voice sliced through the tension. Is there a problem here? Ryan looked him up and down, recognizing the confident authority in his stance. No problem, doctor. Just catching up with an old friend. Nathan's tone stayed polite but firm. Then you should move along. This event is about kindness, not cruelty. Ryan scoffed but turned away. Maya let out a shaky breath. Thank you. I am sorry you had to see that. Nathan shook his head. Do not apologize for someone else's disrespect. For the rest of the day, he noticed how quiet she was, how she smiled at others, but never quite met his eyes. That evening, when the fair ended, he found her alone in the reading corner, gathering leftover books. He spoke gently. People like him do not see what matters, but I do. Her hands paused mid-motion. She looked up, and there was something raw in her eyes. Why are you being so kind to me, Nathan? He held her gaze. Because you remind me what real strength looks like. The air between them stilled, and for a moment, the entire world outside the window faded. Neither of them spoke again, but both knew something in their story had just changed forever. The next week at Harborview felt heavier, as if the air itself carried something unspoken between Maya and Nathan. After the confrontation with Ryan, they both moved through the clinic with quiet politeness, careful not to linger too long in each other's presence. But every time their eyes met across the hallway, the silence said more than words ever could. Nathan tried to lose himself in work, but focus refused to stay. The Colton board had begun sending official letters to the clinic, demanding his return to headquarters. His uncle had even called the hospital director, threatening to expose his real identity if he did not comply. Nathan knew the truth could destroy the fragile trust he had built with everyone here, especially with Maya. One gray afternoon, as he reviewed files in his office, a knock came at the door. Maya stood there holding a clipboard, cheeks pink from the cold. You forgot to sign these, she said softly. He reached for the papers, but her fingers brushed his, and the contact froze them both for a moment. Thank you, he said quietly. She nodded, then hesitated. You have been distant lately. Did I do something wrong? No, he said quickly. You did everything right. Then why does it feel like you are leaving? Her question struck him like a pulse through the chest. Nathan wanted to tell her everything, the weight of his family, the empire waiting, the secret that had followed him since the day he changed his name. But before he could answer, his phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed Colton Medical Group. He silenced it immediately, but the moment was already broken. She looked at him, confusion softening into hurt. You are hiding something, aren't you? Maya, it is not what you think, he said, standing. Please, trust me. Her voice trembled. I have trusted you more than anyone. She stepped back, shaking her head. And right now, I feel foolish for it. Before he could stop her, she turned and walked out, the sound of her footsteps fading down the hall. That night, rain fell hard over the harbor, waves crashing against the pier. Nathan sat alone in his office, staring at the photo of the healing routine group smiling on the wall. He knew he could not hide forever. The truth was coming, whether he was ready or not. The next morning, the inevitable happened. The largest health network site in the country released a front-page article, Heir, Colton Empire working undercover at local clinic. The story spread across the city within hours. By noon, reporters were gathered outside Harborview's glass doors. Cameras flashed, questions flew. Maya arrived that same afternoon, her expression unreadable as she saw the crowd. Patients whispered, staff looked stunned, and Nathan stood in the middle of the lobby, surrounded by flashes of light. His secret was no longer a secret. When their eyes met, Maya's heart sank. Everything, the warmth, the laughter, the trust, suddenly felt like a story written for someone else. She walked straight past him without a word. He called out, "Maya, please, let me explain." But she kept going until the automatic doors closed behind her. Outside, rain streaked down her face as she whispered to herself. So it was all a lie. She clutched her silver bracelet so tightly it left an imprint on her skin. Nathan followed her out into the storm, his coat soaked, his voice breaking. "It was never a lie. I came here because I needed to remember why this work mattered. You reminded me of that." But she could not look at him. "Then why did you not tell me who you really were?" "Because I did not want you to see my name before you saw me." Her eyes filled with tears. "Now that I do, I am not sure which one is real." She turned away, leaving him standing alone in the rain as reporters shouted his name. For the first time since his father's death, Nathan felt powerless, not as a doctor, not as a millionaire, but as a man who had just lost the one person who truly saw him. He returned to the empty clinic, dripping wet, and sat at her favorite reading corner. The shelves they had built together were still there, filled with books that smelled faintly of hope. On the table lay one of Maya's notebooks, a page left open. Written in her careful handwriting were the words, "Healing ends when truth is hidden." Nathan closed his eyes, his heart breaking, open with regret. He knew this was not the end, but the beginning of his reckoning. The deepest secrets are about to change everything. Subscribe now to catch the dramatic twist that is coming in the next chapter. The following days unfolded like a blur of headlines and silence. Harborview's front doors were locked to the press, but the damage had already been done. Patients hesitated to return, unsure if the clinic they trusted was real or just another project of a billionaire's whim. Nathan worked through the quiet halls with the weight of guilt pressing down on him. Every corner of the building reminded him of Maya, the reading nook, the warm laughter she brought, the small notes she left on the bulletin board that simply read, "Keep going." He tried calling her several times, but each attempt went unanswered. She had not returned to the bookstore either. He even drove past her apartment once, stopping his car across the street, watching the dark window above the florist's shop where she lived. He wanted to see a light, any sign that she was all right, but it stayed dark. Back at the clinic, Nathan buried himself in work. He signed papers, managed damage control, and attended forced meetings with the Colton board. His uncle called again, this time demanding he return to corporate headquarters immediately. "You had your little experiment," the older man said coldly. "Now come home and do what your father built you to do." Nathan's voice was calm but final. "No, I am not coming back. I will fix this here." He hung up before the man could respond. He had lost enough by running from truth. He would not run again. Late one evening, he walked into the empty reading corner. The lights were dim, the harbor outside covered in fog. He picked up a worn book from the shelf, one that still had Maya's handwriting on the inside cover, "For anyone who needs a reason to try again." Her words echoed inside him. That was when he made his decision. If healing began with honesty, then he would rebuild everything on that truth. The next morning, he announced to the staff that he would be launching a new initiative, Human First, a foundation dedicated to affordable healthcare and emotional support for underprivileged patients. He would fund it personally, with complete transparency about who he was. Some employees looked uncertain, others nodded with quiet admiration. For the first time, Nathan spoke openly. "This clinic was never meant to be a cover. It was a lesson. I lost sight of that, and I intend to make it right." When the reporters returned, expecting a scandal, they found instead a man who no longer hid his name. Standing before them, Nathan said clearly, "Healing is not about reputation or wealth. It is about showing up when others turn away." That night, the story spread again, but this time, it was different. The headlines no longer called him a fraud. They called him the heir who chose humanity. Still, none of it mattered to Nathan, unless Maya heard it too. He hoped, wherever she was, she would see that he had not forgotten the promise he once made to be someone worthy of her trust. And in the quiet of his office, as the harbor lights flickered against the glass, he whispered her name like a prayer, hoping the wind might carry it back to her. A month passed before the noise around the scandal finally began to fade. The Human First Foundation had launched successfully, and Nathan poured every ounce of his energy into it. The clinic, once quiet and uncertain, started to come alive again. Patients returned, drawn not by the Colton name, but by the sincerity that filled every corner. Still, even in success, there was an emptiness that followed him everywhere, a silence shaped like Maya. She had vanished completely, leaving behind no note, no forwarding address. The only trace of her existence was the silver bracelet she had once worn, now kept inside Nathan's desk drawer. He opened it often, running his thumb along its surface as if it could somehow bring her back. The Human First Gala arrived on a bright Saturday evening, the Foundation's first major event. The city's elite filled the grand hall, flashes from cameras bouncing off the glass ceiling. But Nathan's speech was not written for them, it was for her. When he stepped onto the stage, the room quieted. His voice was steady, warm, and stripped of every pretense. "When I first came to Harborview, I thought I was running from the weight of my name," he began. "But I learned that true healing does not come from escaping. It comes from facing the truth, and from the people who remind us of it." Behind him, the large projector screen flickered to life, showing photographs of the clinic, the reading corner, and the patients they had helped. Then came a final image, a close-up of a hand holding a bracelet beneath the sunlight. The audience gasped softly. Nathan continued, his tone turning personal. "There was someone who taught me that compassion is the most powerful medicine we have. She believed that every story matters, even the broken ones. Tonight, this foundation stands because of her." He paused, emotion catching in his throat. "If she can hear me, I want her to know, thank you for saving me long before I could save anyone else." The crowd erupted into applause, but Nathan barely heard it. His eyes swept the room, searching for a face he feared would never appear. And then, near the back, movement caught his attention. Maya stood among the crowd, dressed simply in a pale blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. For a moment, time stilled. She looked hesitant, uncertain whether she belonged there, but when their eyes met, the years of doubt and distance melted in an instant. Nathan stepped down from the stage, ignoring the flashes of cameras, and walked toward her. The audience parted, whispering, as he stopped a few feet away. "Maya," he said softly, his voice trembling with relief. "You came." She smiled faintly. "I heard there was a doctor who finally told the truth." He let out a shaky breath that turned into a quiet laugh. "I could not have done it without you." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Nathan opened his hand, revealing the silver bracelet. "I kept this," he said, "but it was never mine to hold." She looked down at it, then back into his eyes. Maybe it was meant to find its way back. As the applause rose again around them, Nathan gently placed the bracelet onto her wrist. The metal glimmered under the stage lights, a small circle of forgiveness and hope. And though the world watched, it felt like there were only two of them in that room, two souls finally finding their way home. Spring returned to the harbor with the smell of salt and new beginnings. A few months had passed since the Human First Gala, but the memory of that night still lingered in every corner of Harborview. The clinic had grown into something larger than anyone expected, a place where patients felt seen, where healing was shared instead of prescribed. And at the heart of it all were two people who had once been broken in their own quiet ways. Every morning, Maya arrived early, opening the blinds to let in the soft light that glowed across the bookshelves. The reading corner was no longer just a quiet space. It was filled with laughter, soft music, and the steady rhythm of footsteps belonging to people who finally believed that they mattered. She often caught herself smiling as she worked, feeling a calm she had never known before. Nathan had returned to his practice, but not as the secret millionaire or the reluctant heir. He worked simply as Dr. Nathan Carter, co-founder of the Human First Foundation. The world knew his name now, yet he carried it with humility. The title heir no longer defined him. His actions did. One morning, as the sun rose, over the water, he found Maya standing by the window, gazing at the harbor. She turned when she heard him behind her. "I still cannot believe how much this place has changed," she said softly. He smiled. "It changed because you believed it could." She shook her head. "No, Nathan, it changed because you did." He stepped closer, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Then maybe it is time I make one last change." Maya's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a silver ring, simple but elegant, reflecting the morning light. "I once told you healing is about learning to be whole again," he said quietly. I did not realize that wholeness was something we could build together. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, Nathan. He took her hand, the same hand that had once trembled the day they met. Maya Thompson, he said, his voice warm and steady. Will you marry me not because I saved you, but because you saved me? For a moment, all sound seemed to disappear, the wind, the waves, the hum of the clinic. Then she nodded, smiling through her tears. Yes, she said, 1,000 times, yes. Outside, the harbor shimmered beneath the morning sun, as if blessing them both. When she placed her arms around him, the silver bracelet brushed gently against his wrist, the same one that had once marked the beginning of their story. Now, it was a symbol of how far they had come. Later that evening, the staff gathered in the lobby for a small celebration. Nathan raised a glass, his voice full of gratitude, to truth, to healing, and to the belief that love is the greatest medicine of all. Maya looked at him, her heart steady, her smile soft. For the first time, she was not afraid of the future. Together, they had rewritten what it meant to be whole. And as the lights of the city flickered across the harbor, their story came full circle. A shy girl, a young millionaire, and the healing that brought them home. Thank you for joining us for this cinematic adventure. If you want more untold or real stories of billionaire love and redemption, please subscribe and choose your next true heart journey on your screen now.